Hello and welcome everyone to our Midnight Forest painting. It's a mini masterpiece, 5 by 7. You can see that I actually have it's 7 inches down, 5 inches across. My name is Anita Thompson. I teach art for mostly libraries, but also adult classes at a rec center, kids classes, teens, all ages. But I'm very happy to be here with you this evening. This class is sponsored by Warminster Library, and I'm so grateful for it because we can paint, but we don't have to leave our homes, which is great. And if you have any questions, you can put those in the chat, and I'm always monitoring the chat. This will be recorded. It will be available on my YouTube channel in about a month. It will be on my YouTube channel hidden. And if you've registered for this, you'll receive the link. But it will, like some of my other videos, they become available to the public after about a month of the library having them. Okay, so we are going to get started. The colors that we're using are just black, blue, and white. The blue is going to be dependent on how dark you want your blue. This is a primary blue. As you can see, it's pretty dark. I'm just going to kind of hold that up to the screen here. But whatever blue you have will work. You'll just have a little bit of a lighter sky. Okay. I also want to just remind you to make sure that you are on speaker view because I have spotlighted this video so that it is closer. And I'm going to zoom in here since it's little. I have my copy right here because I could not find my original, and I think it's probably under something because it's so tiny. I was scrambling and I'm going, where did I put it? And because I've been cleaning so much this weekend, I have a feeling it's under something. So I need to find it. But in the meantime, I took a paper copy of it from online. All right, so we're going to start, and it's a very simple drawing. We do most of it in the paint, but what we want to do is kind of sketch in towards the top left corner. We want to sketch in our crescent moon. And so we're going to do that right here. So we're using our pencil, and you just have to make it as light as you want. I always make it darker so it will show up on Zoom. And we also want to get an idea of where our clouds are going to be. And so once you do that, you can get an idea by kind of just sketching them in. I like to have one up in the right corner. And one a little bit down from there. Here again, if yours don't come out exactly my shape, it's okay. I promise you won't be graded for it. I promise. Kind of look like weird little aliens when I'm drawing them in. But we want to get an idea about where to put them. I like to have one kind of right across from the crescent moon here, and it kind of goes a little bit over the crescent moon. And let's see what else. We're going to have, so as our sky gets lower toward the ground, it gets lighter. In our evening sky here. Also feel free to create a shooting star. I've had people do that before. It's kind of fun. You can also change your moon if you want a full moon or any of the other phases of the moon. Feel free to have fun with that. Like I said, I'm just sort of sketching in about where I want the clouds. I feel like this is a fun little piece that you could even do over with teens and kids. Um, you can make it bigger, but I kind of like this size, this 5 by 7. I've been picking these a lot so that we can get into more detail. I'm working on summer programs right now, and I have some fun ones coming up in the summer. So maybe I will put those in next week's newsletter. I haven't gotten out this week's newsletter yet, but next week's, I think I might be done some of the paintings. So I will add those in to the newsletter. Okay. So now we kind of want to sketch in where we want our trees. Now I like to have my trees a bit tall on the left side. And then as you see, it's sort of like this shape. Like it, and you don't have to draw this shape in. I'm just kind of showing you. It goes like this, and it comes right back up as far as where the trees hit. So I like to draw lines for the trees so that I know where to add them. I'm going to make these darker so you can see. And you want to think about how far they are so that, you know, you can still create um, the basically the branches. And I'm just kind of, you know, making branches with my line work. So I'm just kind of looking to see about which way I want those branches to go. And it also kind of gives me an idea of how close I want them. And then maybe I want to add some more. So remember, we're also going to have some sort of some forest coverage here at the bottom. But like I said, I'm just kind of planning out where I want these trees. And then I like to have one sort of right here on the end to the right. You know, and some I sort of just do freehand, but for this, I'm just kind of showing you how I kind of plan it out on paper or canvas in this case. And then have a bit of sort of a shadow right here, sort of like a clump. Let me move this down. Give everybody a minute. But the first thing that we're going to be starting with is the background sky. And I like to use my flat brush for that. And I just kind of wet it a little bit so that the brush isn't so dry. And then I kind of pat it on my paper towel here. And what we're going to do is, so we're going to go from dark to light. And so we're going to start off first with the dark. And so I actually start off black up at the top, and then I mix black and blue together to get my second color. I know it's hard to tell on Zoom, but I've mixed in the blue and the black to get an incredibly dark blue. And then it's going to get progressively lighter. So it'll be the regular blue, and then I'm going to mix in a bit of white. So again, this is black, blue, and white. And then eventually I mix in blue and white to get it a bit lighter when it comes down to the trees. So you might want to pre-mix some of these colors. I like to have maybe at least 4 to 5 different blues. And with this one, I'm going to add white. And some of these are useful for the clouds too, although our clouds are actually going to be a little bit more gray as well. So you see I have a bunch of colors here for the sky. We've got the black. We then have the black and blue mixed together. We have our blue. But I forgot, before the blue, we actually use black, blue, and white here. We start to add some white. And then we use the blue and white, and we get progressively lighter. That right here. Wash up my brush. So whatever is easier for you, as far as the brush that you pick, whether you pick the flat brush or the round brush, I find the flat brush easier to use when going left to right with our colors. So we're going to start off first with our black. And remember, this is a tiny canvas. So you just want to add some to the tip of your flat brush. And then we're going to go from left to right across the top. So obviously, you're going to want to make sure to go around or right up against your clouds. So you can turn your brush to the side, meaning your flat brush. And so I would kind of start getting a little bit lighter, maybe around, oh, let me add some black here. Depending on how dark you want the top part of your sky. The best thing to do is kind of to add in the black, and then you start to add in the blue underneath, and then move it slowly up into your black. So this is still black. Yep, this is just black. Originally, I put a little bit of blue down here, and then I changed it and added more black because I wanted it to be a bit darker up here. And then I'm going to rinse out my brush and start adding the next color, which is our blue and black combination right here. So you see it's still very dark. And again, left to right. I have to add a little more here, mix up a little more here. So you can also go back, and while your paint is wet, add in some more blue. You can add some streaks of, light blue if it's still wet. The whole point is to have the colors kind of melt into each other. So again, this is that bluish black. And I'm going to take that down till about right here. I'm going to make a line on my canvas. That is the bluish. That's the blue and black combination. As you can see, I'm kind of working fast, going left to right. Again, this is blue and black combined. And I'm going to work it up until this spot or this line that I've created with my paint. You know, it looks pretty rough right now as far as the sky, but this is just our first layer. And it will indeed get better. And once you get to this spot, you then want to go for the next color that is the blue, black, and white that I mixed up here. So it's going to look a bit like a kind of a grayish blue. Now, again, if you don't like these colors for, you know, your painting, you can absolutely change them, but we're getting lighter as we go down. So here's that blue, black, and white. Oh, we have somebody coming on. Hi, Barbara, welcome. I am going to copy the information in the chat. We started around 6:34, I think, but this is being recorded. And we're happy that you could make it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We are doing the basically the sky at first, and we're working in starting at black at the top and progressively getting lighter as we go down.
All right, thank you.
You're very welcome. I'm just going to put you on mute. If you have any questions, you can put those in the chat for me. Because this is being recorded. So we started off with black. We have our clouds. You know, we've got to work around our clouds here. We start with black. We add a combination of black, white, and blue. And then, let me move this around. I'm going to move my camera up a little bit so you can see my palette here. The only thing missing is the white. Let's see if I can get that in over here. A little bit. Yep. There we go. All right. And now we're going to get progressively lighter down here. So I'm going to start to add in this blue here. So again, that is a blue and a white. I'm going to mix a little more of it. It's very dry in my house, so my paint is drying up quite a bit. It's especially dry upstairs, which is where I'm at. Now, for this, you're going to see a definite change, right? A definite contrast change in color. And you're also going to see that it gets harder to actually have the trees kind of go around the trees. So I actually end up painting over the trees and leaving the clouds. But you can kind of try to paint in between, like right here. It's difficult though with these kind of trees. but it can be done. So I'm kind of doing that just to show you here. If you decide to do it that way, I'll show you two ways to do it. But basically, we want to get most of the background covered. And you can see what I'm doing is I'm still using the kind of medium to light blue that I've added the white to. And then what I'm going to do is start to move upward with this light color and have it go into the dark and then bring that dark in for the light part as well so that it seamlessly blends. And I'm going to get a little lighter here by the trees. Yeah, I just decided to kind of paint over the trees. We can redraw those once this dries. It's kind of how I did it when I first created this. I drew everything in, and then I always find it hard on this small of a canvas to kind of paint around everything. So I kind of just repainted over it. Okay. So you can see now that there is an absolute line here, right? So I'm going to take some of my light blue that's still on my brush, and I'm going to start to go into above right where the dark color is. And you see what that's doing? It's blending it. And then you can do the same with the dark down here. So, and this is where we get to play a bit with our colors even more. I'm going to add a little bit of a mix of the blue and the black. So you want to make it look like that, it's not, there's not a solid line. And so see, my paint is still wet. And I'm starting to make that line from dark to light disappear and blend in. So if you look at the sky just normally, there are so many different colors, and they're usually still kind of blending in. I go from left to right using the side of my brush, kind of holding my brush like this. So it's kind of standing up. And then I start to add some light streaks into the black. And again, I'm going to do the same as far as the light areas. I'm going to add in my royal blue. I like to add in the royal blue at first to see how dark it gets. And then if I want to get spots of it a little darker, I can, add a little bit of some of the black with the blue. Now remember, we're going to be painting over the bottom of the sky, with black once this dries. But you want to think about what the sky looks like behind the trees. And what I like to do is lighten it up right here at the bottom. I'm still working on my blending and kind of deciding how dark I want my sky. So I keep kind of adding a little bit more black up at the top. And then adding a little bit more of the light blue as well, so that you get that look of the streaking, the streaky colors that are happening. But that's how you do it, is that you basically make sure that your paint is wet on your canvas, and then you can blend everything. So here I'm adding a little bit of some white down here on top of my light blue, because I want that, I want it to look like the light is coming up behind the trees, kind of right in the middle of the canvas and a little bit to the right side here. So again, my canvas is wet, but I'm only using a little bit of color on the tip of my brush. And if you find it easier to switch now to your round brush, you can do that. But I do a lot with my flat brush. All right, I'm going to go up here and I want to make it some sort of streaks in the dark areas. So I might actually switch to my round brush. Definitely going to be switching to our round brush for the clouds. But the round brush gives me a little more control as far as, since this is a smaller painting, as far as kind of taking certain parts of the sky and lightening it up. So I am doing that right now. Again, adding in streaks of the blue. And I already have black mixed in on my brush. So it's kind of creating a nice variation of color here. And a little more of the regular blue. So again, yours may be a little bit faster, but what I like to do is really make the various blues blend into each other, but at the same time, have a bit more streaky. And we can still play with a little bit of the background once we start with the clouds, because sometimes you want to darken up some of the sky to make it look like there are clouds in the background, and they're sort of very filmy. So we play with the actual sky rather than the clouds. Right now I'm adding some darker patches right here, just by adding some darker streaking with the regular blue, because I know that I'm going to be adding some clouds here. And so how I mentioned that, you can play with the background as well to prepare for your lighter clouds. So right here, what I'm doing is I have some of the, the regular royal blue on my brush, and I'm actually going to make it look like I'm painting kind of puffy, puffy round areas in the sky. Almost like I'm creating a like line work for some cloud coverage. And that's just going to help with the background when we're painting in the clouds. Obviously, we do the trees last. Again, I'm going to come over here to the left and add some black to the left side of my canvas. And again, I'm going to think about that, the sky is kind of cloudy, even without doing the clouds yet. And I'm going to kind of paint the sky a bit with the black in order to kind of make it look like there's filmy, kind of filmy areas with the black. So see what I'm doing here? And again, we can come back after we start creating our clouds, which is going to be next. I'm just working a little more color into the top of the black here. So basically that is just a little bit of bluish black. And I'm gonna kind of rotate my canvas so you can see that there's variations of color there. I have to still fill in some of these white spots on the canvas, but I wanted you to see how that works when you've got all these blues happening in the sky. You can really make it look like anything you want. I mean, obviously it's going to be different than mine and it's going to be yours. It's going to be your masterpiece. Oh, thanks, Lisa. Back at you. I'm always saying, as adults, we deserve to play a little bit too in life, right? And I feel like art is a way that we can do that for sure. All right, so I'm filling in some of these spots, these white spots in the canvas. Okay, so your water is probably pretty mucky right now with all the black and the blue we're using. So you might want to grab some more fresh water. I like to kind of do that since we're going to start moving into our clouds. If you don't feel, you don't have to if you don't feel like it. I just kind of like to do that, and then I just kind of rinse my brushes real quickly. So I'm going to get some new fresh water. Take about 2 minutes. And if you want to do the same, or if you want to grab a drink, use the restroom, feel free to do so. Just going to go grab some fresh water. Some more paper towels. So funny, my upstairs bathroom, that's where I kind of refresh the water. And I still have this, it's like a birchwood, Mrs. Meyer's birchwood soap in the bathroom. And so I cleaned my brushes out with that, and now they smell nice and minty. It's funny. They do it. That soap did a good job actually getting them clean. Okay. Okay, so we are now going to move on to our clouds and our crescent moon. So I use the round brush for that. depends. You can use your flat brush and then also your round brush, and I will show you how to do that as well. So just depending on how large your flat brush is, you can see that mine is pretty small. And so I like to start off with a cloud as a line at the bottom and then make kind of the puffy stuff happen around that line. So that the clouds look more realistic rather than like little kids' clouds. Although, if you make little kids' clouds, I think that's fun too. No judging here. But we're going to start off with our flat brush first. And basically, we're going to create the colors of the clouds very similar to what we did with the blue, except we're going to mostly use, so you're going to use mostly white. So you're going to want to have a space for your clouds here, right? So make sure you get a nice dollop of white for all your clouds. Have some nice space around your plate. And then we're going to start expanding because we're going to be adding in some of that grayish blue that we had here. You can see that mine has dried up. So I'm actually going to clean off my brush and create some more. So again, that blue, or that darker sort of, it's like a bluish gray. It is a bit of blue. I'm going to mix it right next to the white, I should say. So we're going to have now kind of like that light blue that we had from before. And then I'm going to grab some black. And I'm going to add a little more white to that. So again, that color that I just made, we just made 3 colors. Well, we didn't make the white. The white is here. Then we take our regular blue and we mix some white in with it. I put it right next to the white so that we can kind of see that we're going to have 3 different colors to create our clouds with. And then that third color is the blue and white with some black added in. And then mine got a little dark, so I added a little more. You kind of want it to be like a kind of like a slate blue, like a grayish blue. That's right here. Okay. And we are actually going to start off with that color. So we're going to start off with the darker blue or the grayish blue, right? So you're going to see here on the left, it get really dark, right? And I used my flat brush. I'm going to wash it out and put that on the side now that the basic part of it is done. And then I'm going to get into my white. So again, just a little bit. And I'm going to start painting. I'm going to go really close so that you can see the evolution of this cloud. So I'm going to paint kind of the edges and kind of make it look a little, you know, curvy. And then I'm going to go up above. And I might extend that cloud a little bit, like a little bit of a line. And then right around it, I'm going to make little puffs of streaks. And I'm going to continue to kind of do that in the sky like this. Now here again, if you want to switch to your flat brush, I do like to use the flat brush to create kind of like lines in the sky. And so I'm going to go back in with a little more white. And you can kind of make even little, kind of like little puffy cloud trails. Maybe that's what I should be calling them, kind of like cloud trails. And then I'm going to go back in to my original cloud there. And I'm going to pick up some of that blue that we mixed in. Oops. Of course, I just mixed in my black with the blue. With the blue next to it that I didn't want to mix in. So I'm going to remix over here. I was getting a little ahead of myself, and my brush had a mind of its own. And my mind was the one just making it do that. So I just mixed in some of the blue, and now I'm going to go up on the cloud a little bit. And I added some of that, of the blue, and then I'm going to go back in and add in the white. Now, if the blue doesn't work for you, meaning the light blue, you can leave it out and just do the grayish, that darker kind of gray color. And so in order to make it kind of wispy, again, you don't want too much paint on your brush. And you can actually start to add this color to the next cloud, which is right here. So this is like, now I'm going a little bit lighter. And I'm using my flat brush to make the cloud look a little bit wispy by taking the edges of the cloud with a little bit of the paint on my brush. And you see how I'm moving the color into the sky? See that? And you can start to do it even in the, the sky area to get a little more fluctuation with your colors. So usually also what I like to do is add some black around the outside of the cloud. So for this one, I'm going to add it on the sky. I'm going to kind of make like, kind of poofy little round shapes with the sky area. See what I did there? I'm kind of molding it just a little bit and making it a little bit dark around the cloud. You can do that for all of your clouds. And it doesn't have to be black. It can also be like the black mixed with the blue. But I'm kind of forming the shape of the roundish parts of the cloud using the sky. And then I'm going to go back and add some pops of white. So I kind of work on a few clouds at once. And I also like to start using that kind of slate color for the darker areas on the cloud, but I'm also going to add in the white as the last resort. So I don't want that white to be so white. So I'm going to mix in a little bit of the blue. And then again, always getting darker kind of around the edges of the curved area of the cloud. See, and here's my first cloud that is kind of finished. I'm going to start moving on to the next one. Again, making the outer area just a little bit darker, meaning so your sky. And again, that can be a mixture of your black and blue. It can be black. And again, the other thing is you can switch between your flat brush and your round brush, depending on what you're more comfortable with. So I'm going to kind of load up this one with, I have some of the blue on my round brush and a little bit of the dark. And I'm going to kind of make it a little wispy by pulling out kind of the curved part. And then I'm going to keep all the colors on my brush. And I'm going to start kind of making round little puffy areas in the shape so that it then kind of looks more cloud-like for this one. So this one, I'm using my round brush to make those little kind of puffy spots. You know, and you can always add on to the cloud, like maybe it's a big cloud. You know, it started off small, but maybe there's some like right behind here. It's kind of fun to make clouds, right? And I'm going to go back up here to this cloud. And also, if all else fails, add some white. If you're sitting there going, ah, my cloud is too dark, or there's too many colors, you can make it basically white and a little bit of gray. So here, I'm using both brushes. I switched to my flat brush. The other thing is, if you really don't like it, you can paint over it with black. You want to start over as far as like your cloud altogether. Add a little bit of blue underneath. And then I slowly start to kind of work on the other ones as the paint is drying. I'm going to make this cloud a little bit gray, but add some pops of white. And again, don't forget your crescent moon too. We're going to add that in if you haven't already. I mean, maybe you've gone ahead and you've sort of added it, but I like to add it and then add a little bit of some little bit of cloud coverage over it. I'm going to make this cloud a little more bluish. And if you ever, if you kind of study a cloud, they've got like darker areas of them, of parts of them. They've got like, kind of grayish areas that are darker gray, some of the light white fluffy, and then bit of blue too. Sometimes actually clouds can be a lot of colors because of the sky. It can be, if it's a sunset, there can be reds and oranges. It's really neat. There's an artist I know. I think I've mentioned her before to some of you. Her name is Kelly Money, and she is a cloud artist from New Hope, and her clouds are incredible. Like, you probably think to yourself, how many clouds can you really paint? It's amazing. I always think of her when I look up at the sky and, notice the clouds. You think clouds are actually easy to paint. I don't think they are. I think they're a bit difficult to make them look fluffy and realistic. She does an incredible job. So I'm getting lighter with my clouds as I'm getting further down toward the trees. So that means I then just use a bit of white on the edge of my brush, or tip of my brush, I should say. And I kind of create the shape of the cloud I want. And then I'm going to go back in with a little bit more of some blue. And just take your time with the clouds. I'm going to start adding in a bit more blue to some of these. I should say blue mixed with white. Another tip I saw to make clouds is to use a Q-tip. I've never tried it before, but I think probably saw it on YouTube. And I thought, I have to try that. So if you have a Q-tip and you feel like you want to try it, go for it. And I like the clouds to kind of fade a little bit into the sky as they get closer to the bottom here. So I'm going to go back in and kind of repaint a bit of some blue in the sky part. You know, you can kind of dab them too with a little bit of paint. Um, to make them look a little fluffy. And then remember, you know, adding in a little bit of some dark area in between the clouds by using either black or blue. Um, I like to kind of do both, but the blue more so down below as we're getting closer to the bottom part of the sky. And you can make some fluffy parts with a little bit of dark blue here. Like what I'm doing here is I'm kind of making, again, they have like um, sort of like shadows, the clouds behind it and even a little bit on top of it. All right, and now I'm going back in and adding in some more whites to the clouds on top of the, you know, the dark colors that we added. You know, and again, think about it as if you're making clouds like, you know, like you're making a kid's painting, kind of like making in the poofy round parts. But you want those poofy round parts to be surrounded by color. Okay, and now when I start adding some, you know, a little bit of some streaks around your clouds by using a little bit of some blue and white. This is when I usually go back in too with a little bit of black, just to make certain parts around clouds a little darker. feel like this one, my sky is stormy. Okay. Now remember, we want to paint in our crescent moon and also our stars. So this is where, if you want to use, an incredibly thin round brush, this is where you would do that. But you want to very carefully use some white for the tip of your brush. This is for the crescent moon. And you just add a little bit and you very carefully paint it on. Like barely touching the canvas. I like the Q-tip idea though. I mean, not Q-tip, the, oh my gosh, what's the word?
Toothpick.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, I'm going Q-tip, clothespin. Yeah, I'm curious what that, it probably works very well. I've also found using my flat brush is very helpful too, to kind of make a thin line. And then if you need to go around your crescent to make it a little more kind of even around or thinner, you can do that with your black. Cleaning up my crescent moon here. Thanks, Kristen. I saw that you just put the toothpick. Oh, gosh. My brain. This is also where, so I like to kind of let the crescent moon dry a little bit. And in the meantime, start adding in the stars. So I'm going to do that. Again, I'm going to make sure that my round brush is very much comes to a point. And then I'm going to add just a touch of white paint, kind of like a bit of a blob. And then very gently start to dot around for the stars. I'm going to go all around your painting. If you're using your round brush and you feel like it's too thick, you can kind of dot along, kind of like move your brush to the side a little bit and just lightly touch, almost like you're just touching one or two hairs of the brush. So if your brush isn't that thin, you're trying to get that, that might be helpful. You know, also making some of the dots very light so it looks like they're far away. That helps make it look realistic. Sometimes I like to do a little bit of clusters. And I like to give a little bit of some sort of light dusting right near the crescent moon by going from left to right and making it look like there's a little bit of some clouds over it. Now again, you don't have to. And then I sometimes like to go in and make a few parts on the crescent moon a little brighter by kind of dotting in some of the white. So, and you're going to let this dry just a little bit because now we're going to start with our final part, which is going to be the trees. And I use my flat brush for the trees. So again, I use this brush, I use the side of it, and we can make the lines again. So let me just adjust my camera here a little more. And I use a combination of black and also the black and the blue to make it just a little bit less dark. And what I like to do is kind of go across the bottom using black, sort of maybe about like a half an inch, so that it kind of makes it look like it's forest-like. You know, and you can bring this up, you know, even more. You can bring it up further as you progress with the trees to kind of fill them in. But again, I like to kind of go up the left side and the right side of the canvas with that black. rotate my camera just a little bit here so you can see. All right, so I'm going to start adding the black in. And so again, first, just like we drew them in, I'm going to add in lines of where I want my trees to be. You know, I keep coming over here and kind of dipping in, you know, again, just the tip. And I like to kind of start a little bit wide and then fill in more trees as I go. You know, different lengths of trees make it look more realistic. Okay. Now, you can wet your brush a tiny bit with a little bit of water if, say, you feel like your paint isn't liquidy. But then you're going to come over, you're going to start making branches. Again, I kind of go back and forth between my round brush and my flat brush. It just depends on how comfortable you feel. I tend to use my flat brush a lot though. I'm taking, you know, the side of the brush and just making kind of real quick and light lines. And then go back later and kind of fill in the bottom parts of the trees to make it look a little more like it's a forest. And again, this is just the way I do it. You may do yours a little differently. You may use your round brush. Nothing wrong with that. And you can add little trees kind of, you know, in the background. I'm going to load up my brush again. And I change direction. Sometimes I have the tree kind of look like it's, you know, the leaves are kind of going upward. And other times, have it going down. You know, and once you have your tree lines in, then you can kind of work up from the bottom and start to kind of fill in the bottom by kind of patting along with your brush to make it look a little more filled in. and also adding a little bit of dimension by bringing the ground a little bit up. But as you can see, I'm sort of, patting it along so that sometimes the blue of the sky is showing through. I might add a few more trees or suggestions of trees. And then just taking a look again at your sky. I'm going to add a little more blue in some parts of my sky. Add one more cloud here. I always like to go back in and, again, add just a little bit more, maybe a little more blue in the sky, although we already created the stars. So if you're doing that, you have to make sure to, add in your stars again. I am so curious to see what everybody's looks like. In a minute, I'm going to stop the recording. And if you're interested, showing your piece. Just going to rinse out my brushes here. I'll give everybody a minute. So if you got a message. Oh, thank you. Thanks, Debbie. Okay. So I'm going to remove my spotlight and I'm going to stop the recording so you feel comfortable sharing if you want.